Hey everyone, now today we're learning the C major scale. Now the C major scale is a great scale to learn how to play to begin with. It's very easy to remember, there's no sharps and flats. All you do is you start with your C note and you move up a tone, a semitone, 3 more tones and then a semitone and then you're done. And remember there's no sharps or flats, okay? So these are all the notes in the C major scale, this is what we'll be playing. Now the great thing about the C major scale is if you remember what chords can be found in the key signature of C major, like all these chords, yeah? This one scale, the C major scale, can be played over all of them. All those notes are going to work because none of those chords have any sharps or flats, and this scale doesn't include any sharps or flats. Really easy to remember, and it's a great scale to begin with. Now I'm going to show you how to play it in 2 different positions, but you can play it anywhere on the neck, and I'm going to show you only 2 ways, and then it's a great idea for you guys to learn how to play it all over the neck, and just chipping away and sort of learning how to play it in different positions, or starting in one position and then moving up to another. That's going to be great to be able to look and understand the entire fretboard. Now if something that I've said doesn't make any sense or you don't understand intervals, go back and check out this video or go back and check out the other videos in the grade 1 playlist, but otherwise let's press on. Now remember, we're going to be playing this particular scale in this position, so what that means is if there's any first frets, you're going to be playing them with your first finger. If there's any second frets, you're going to be playing with your second finger. If there's any third frets, you're going to be playing with your third finger. And if there's any fourth frets, there won't be any, but if there was, you'd play them with your pinky. So let's dive in. So remember, all the notes are C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then C again. So we're going to start at middle C and go up an octave higher. So start off on middle C with your third finger on the 3rd fret of the A string. That's where middle C is, okay? Now the next note we need is D, so we just want to go the string below, D. The next note we need is going to be E, so we want the 2nd fret on the D string with your 2nd finger. The next note after E is going to be F, so it's just a semitone or a fret away, so we're going to use our 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the D string. And that's our F note. Now we need a G note, so it just makes sense if we're going higher strings anyway. The next string down is the G string, so open G string. Then we want our 2nd finger on the 2nd fret of the G string, that's our A note. Then finally we want the open B string, because that's the next note we want that B note. And last note, we want our 1st finger on the 1st fret of the thin B string. And that's our C note, and that's it, that's the scale. Now what's great about the scale is it should actually start showing you what notes are actually where on guitar, and the fact that with sheet music we start on the middle C and we go up all that way higher onto an octave higher onto that other C. Okay? Now you should really, when you're playing this scale, you should really just try and think about what notes you're actually playing. So another thing that you can do is if you want to visualize the guitar fretboard as a whole, is pick that same C note, okay, 3rd fret on the A string, but this time try and play on one string and move up, okay? So C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So we've played the same notes and we're still going from that middle C up an octave higher, but in this time we moved up horizontally. So we're looking at the notes in a different way. So it's really important that once you can play that first scale, and then play it backwards. So maybe have a go playing it horizontally and maybe try other positions. So remember, if you're starting to play all the chords in the key signature of C major, C or D minor or A minor or E minor or G, then you can play that C major scale that we've just learnt over the top of all of those chords and it's going to sound great. Maybe you don't want to play the notes up and down the scale when you're soloing or writing melodies because it could sound quite boring. It sounds quite boring, doesn't it? But just fool around with playing the open strings first and playing those notes. So I'm going to show you another way how to play the C major scale, this time in 2 octaves. So we're going from a C to another C and then to another C. Okay? Now definitely have a look at learning the first scale first, but let's jump in. So it's in the 7th position, and that means your 1st finger is always going to play notes on the 7th fret. Your 2nd finger is only going to play notes on the 8th fret. Your 3rd finger is always going to play notes on the 9th fret, and your pinky is always going to play notes on the 10th fret. Okay, let's jump right in. So first note, so middle C, is to your 2nd finger on the 8th fret of that thick E string. your C note. Then you want your pinky on the 10th fret of the low E string still. That's D. Now you want an E note, so you actually want to jump down a string, so you're on the A string now. So you want your first finger on the 7th fret. That's your E note. And a semitone up from E is F, of course, so you want your second finger on the 8th fret of that A string still. You want your pinky on the 10th fret of the A string, because that is your G note. Now you want your jump down a string, you want your first finger on the 7th fret of the D string, that is your A note. 2 semitones up from A is B, so you want your third finger on the 9th fret of the D string. And finally, a semitone up from B is C, so you want your pinky on the 10th fret of the D string. That's our first octave. Okay, so continuing on from that last C that we just did, you want your pinky on the 10th fret of the D string, because that's your C note, okay? Then you want to jump down a string, so you want your first finger on the 7th fret of the G string, that's your D note. Then you want your third finger on the 9th fret of the G string, that's your E note. A semitone up from E is F, so you want your pinky on the 10th fret of the G string, that's your F note. Jumping down to the B string, you want your second finger on the 8th fret, okay, that's your G note. Then you want your pinky on the 10th fret of the B string, that's your A note. You want your first finger all the way on the 7th fret of the thin E string, that's your B note. And a semitone up from B is of course C, so you want your second finger on the 8th fret of the thin E string. And that's it. So that last octave, and the whole thing together. Remember, it's very important to practice going down as well. So when you're practicing these scales, practice very slowly, just doing one octave. Once you've got one octave down, and you can go up and back in one octave, then tackle the second octave. And it's really important to think about what notes you're actually playing, rather than just remembering what frets and what position, okay? Think about what notes you're playing. So when you're soloing, you're not actually just doing all these random finger drills that you've remembered, oh yeah, 1, 2 pinky, 1, 3 pinky, all that stuff. You don't want to be thinking about that. You're going to be thinking about what notes you're actually playing and how it works within the music that you're playing, and how sort of notes will sound when you're writing a melody or a solo or anything like that, what the notes actually sound like. Now of course, if you just want to play by ear, of course that's always going to be fine, and you should even maybe practice soloing when you're looking and thinking about what notes you're playing, and maybe with you closing your eyes and you're just listening and just hearing how notes are reacting, and then maybe open your eyes and go, oh, that's actually this note, that's what that note sounds against that chord or against that chord progression. Doing both is a really good idea, but having just this fundamental knowledge of knowing what notes are under your fingers is really important, and especially it'll start building your oral skills or your ear training skills, so that you can then just play by feel, and you can just hear what notes are working with the chord progressions, just because you know and you can understand the intervals. Now to begin with, make sure that you can play that 1 octave scale, C major scale. You know what notes you're playing, you know the intervals, and make sure you can play it with all the open strings, okay? That's really important. You can play it up and back, super clean, and it sounds great, okay? Then move on to the first octave in the next position scale that we looked at, the 7th position of the C major scale. Once you got that first octave up and back and you can play that all fine, then do the second octave, and then do the whole thing. Put the whole thing together. Just keep thinking about what notes you're playing. And remember, the C major scale can be played over any of those chords that we discussed before, any of these chords. And if you write a chord progression using any of those chords in any order, if you want to know how to write a riff or write a melody or solo, you could just play any notes without sharps or flats. And that's not to say that you can't have sharps or flats, okay? If you want to play some blues, or you want to add in some blue notes or some colored notes or some chromatic lines, you can of course play sharps or flats. But it's all depending on what tones you want to sort of bring out of the instrument. So let's sort of hear that. If you had a C major chord or a C major triad, okay? If you add in like a D sharp or an E flat, how's that going to sound? Okay, it sounds quite jagged to me, but maybe you want that sound. Maybe it's good leading into another note. It really depends on what sort of sound that you want. So don't just think that I've learnt the C major scale, I can only play that over these particular chords. It's just going to work really well. But again, don't be scared to play things that are outside the box or outside of the norm. Try and find your own voice. Well done, everyone. See you later. So if you like this video and you like the effort I put in, go ahead and hit that like button. If you want to see more scales and learn how to solo and techniques and all that jazz, then go ahead and subscribe. And every week there's many videos coming out. But otherwise, thanks for sticking around, guys. We'll see you again soon. Bye.